Halo Combat Evolved mission The Silent Cartographer is an unforgettable experience and the series at its very best. Its heated beach battle, large open map, and adherence to so many of Bungie's incredible design philosophies makes it an absolute joy to play time and time again, and in this video I'm going to take a look at what makes the level such a fantastic experience. We'll get to the Silent Cartographer itself in just a jiffy, but first here's Halo's story so far. After an attack on the ship the Pillar of Autumn by humanity's enemy the Covenant, Master Chief and Cortana, the AI he swore to protect, find themselves on the mysterious ring world known as Installation 04. The Autumn's captain, Jacob Keyes, had been captured by the Covenant following the attack, and so Chief and a group of Marines head to the ship the Truth and Reconciliation where he was being held and eventually manage to rescue him. Keyes reveals that he had overheard Covenant troops talking about the installation and tells Master Chief that they believe it to be a weapon of some kind. Chief and Cortana then head to an island where a map room leading to the installation's control room is supposedly housed, while Keyes leads another squad in search of a weapons cache, and that's where we'll join the action as Master Chief prepares to assault the island. The Silent Cartographer begins with views of the island and a summary of the mission, giving you a good idea of what you need to do and what the area itself looks like.
The Covenant believe that what they call the Silent Cartographer is somewhere under this island. The Cartographer is a map room that will lead us to Halo's control center. The island has multiple structures and installations. One of them contains the map room.
Everything's calm in the Pelican to begin with, but it doesn't stay that way for long, as Halo has its very own D-Day moment, with the game's theme kicking into gear and a beach swarming with Covenant coming into view. Beach scenes in Halo games have become something of a running theme over the years. Halo 3's The Covenant features one, as does Halo Reach's Long Night of Solace, but it all began with the Silent Cartographer. What always shines through for me when playing this mission is how brilliant the level design in this opening scene is. You start a short distance away from the action, so you have plenty of time to survey the scene ahead of you, which is useful given how little cover there is on offer, but the real star of the show during this section is the enemy placement. The beach is a rather large, open environment, but the majority of enemies you'll face are clustered in the middle of it. It's a clever decision by Bungie as it funnels you down the centre of the map to fight the Covenant and ensures that while the area feels expansive, the pace of the encounter never slows down due to the area's size. You feel like you've been involved in a fast-paced battle across a large area fighting alongside plenty of Marines, but in reality most of the action actually takes place within a fairly small part of the beach. I doubt most would have thought to do this the first time they played the mission, but it is worth noting that you can simply turn around and head in the opposite direction as soon as you leave the Pelican. Eventually you'll discover a pair of dead Marines, some supplies and a Warthog, and I do wonder whether Bungie included the Warthog here to account for the fact that some players may choose this option. As we'll see momentarily, taking the correct path up the beach ends with Foehammer arriving to drop off a Warthog, and so I would guess that Bungie left one here to make sure you still had access to a vehicle even if you fled the beach and never saw that scene play out. As mentioned, if you take the intended path of progression, Foehammer delivers a Warthog, helpfully facing in the direction you need to head in next. However, it's worth noting that you again don't actually have to follow the intended path here either. The obvious place to head next is to the facility housing the map room itself. After all, it's the next building you'll find if you continue on round the island, but you don't have to go there first. If you continue on past it to the dead Marines and Warthog encountered earlier, you can skip the first visit to the map room completely and go straight to the security room instead. And if you do, there's even a slightly different line from Cortana to account for it. Here's what she says if you visit the map room first.
Use the holo panel to shut down the security system.
And here's how it changes if you don't.
This isn't the map room. Analyzing. This is a security override station for the main facility, located somewhere else on this island. Shut the system down so the Covenant won't be able to lock us out.
I think it's really lovely that Bungie accounted for both choices, and the little touches like this, or the fact you don't even have to take part in the beach encounter, go a long way towards making the Silent Cartographer feel like a much less linear experience. Most of Halo's missions tend to be very much about heading from point A to point B, but the sandbox style used during the Silent Cartographer works very well indeed. The mission Halo earlier in the campaign does also do it to an extent during its second half as well, but the Silent Cartographer is without doubt where this style of mission shines brightest. We won't focus on the security room anymore for now, and will instead head back to the map room. As you approach it, you'll see a Covenant ship dropping off troops, and this is a great example of how Bungie makes the Silent Cartographer feel more alive by having events occur around you that seemingly would have happened whether you were present or not, and I'll point out a few more examples of this as we continue. The first visit to the map room isn't the most fruitful, although catching a glimpse of an elite armed with a sword does give you a small preview of what to expect later in the mission, and after being locked out of the depths of the facility, you have no other choice than to head back to your Warthog and continue on to where the security room is located. I absolutely love this ramp just before you find the path leading deeper into the island. It is absolutely begging to be used, and I certainly didn't give driving straight up it a second thought. That is, until I was in mid-air and realised that I was going to land slap bang in the middle of a group of Covenant. Not only is this a great gotcha moment in that it leaves you in a bit of a pickle, but it's also smart from a design perspective as you land right next to the path you need to take once the Covenant have been dispatched. The route to the security room isn't the most obvious in the world, so I like the way the map's layout pushes you in the right direction, albeit with a bit of a surprise thrown in. The next few encounters you fight your way through have that lovely open to narrow ebb and flow that Bungie has always done so wonderfully. You fight the Covenant below the ramp in an open area, then take on more in a narrow section, before meeting the Hunters in an area which is again very spacious. The area housing the Hunters also makes a lot of sense in terms of its individual design, in that you're given fair warning before you actually have to engage them. You can collect supplies from the 2 dead Marines and scope out the area before taking them on, and it also allows you to fight them in a fairly spacious area before you meet 2 in a much more confined space soon after. Another bottleneck similar to the narrow section earlier follows, which again helps mix things up and stops the mission feeling like a long series of only open encounters, before you make your way through one more wider area and head inside to find the security room, the entrance to which is highlighted by the groups of grunts which emerge. Before arriving at the security room itself, you'll encounter a second pair of Hunters. Much like the first encounter not long ago, this is very cleverly designed and is again intended to mix up the pace of the level. You are able to take on the previous duo in a much safer environment with all the space you could possibly need, but now Bungie offers up a much tougher challenge. Instead of dancing around them in a wide open space, this time you have to take them down in one which is far, far smaller and features several obstacles. The first encounter was easier, so you could practice dealing with them, and this second is designed to be much more daunting, ramping up the difficulty to keep things engaging. This area also marks a sharp shift in tone compared to what came before. By this point, you should be feeling pretty pumped up. Things began with the fantastic beach scene, and you've slaughtered plenty of Covenant since, but now a much bleaker soundtrack kicks in, which combines well with the interior as a whole. It's a far darker place than the colourful exterior locations you've previously encountered, and once you've used the security room to unlock the doors leading to the map room, things become even more unsettling. You're again shown the elite wielding a sword, just to remind you that you will have to face him at some point. You hear this frantic message over the radio.
Mayday! Mayday! Dropship Bravo 22 taking enemy fire! Repeat, we are under heavy fire and are losing altitude!
Understood. We're on our way.
And you're even ambushed by a group of invisible elites. As you exit the building, you'll no doubt notice the Pelican you just heard over the radio now lying in ruins nearby, although Cortana does also highlight it too to make sure that you spot it.
Chief, Bravo 22 was bringing us some heavy weapons. After I saw we were up against Hunters, I thought you could use them. Let's move down the beach. Keep an eye out for any cargo we can salvage.
I mentioned the Covenant dropship helping the island feel like a living, breathing place, and the crashed Pelican is another great example of that. And there's also a rocket launcher in the wreckage too, which puts a little power back into your hands after what was quite an intense series of encounters prior. After taking down 2 more Hunters and heading through the previously locked door, you get this brief cutscene. You heard about the Silent Cartographer being somewhere under the island at the start of the mission, so it's nice that this scene is thrown in to really demonstrate that what's below ground is just as expansive as what's on the surface. Bungie then continues to play with this feeling of isolation as you try and take out as many Covenant as you can without being spotted in an area where you feel very much alone. It ticks the last box in terms of showing you everything Halo has to offer within a single level. You have action-packed scenes like the beach, vehicular sections, the more standard moment-to-moment fights against the Covenant, an almost oppressive atmosphere in the security room, and finally stealth. I do, however, have two issues with this section. Firstly, should these Marines really be down here? There may well be something I've missed, but I was under the impression the Covenant got to the map room first and had it well guarded, so I'm not sure how they actually got there. My second issue is that, like many parts of Halo based in Forerunner structures, it can be confusing to navigate at times. Given the cutscene moments prior and the fact that this is the first big Forerunner facility you explore, I'd imagine the tangled web of paths was Bungie attempting to make the area feel like a strange alien place. Unfortunately, however, what it actually highlights is a problem that exists throughout much of Halo's indoor sections, which is a clear lack of waypointing. Dodgy waypointing or not, you will eventually find the map room where another short scene plays out, followed by a radio message that perhaps foreshadows the fact that Captain Keyes and his squad have run into some trouble.
Cortana to Captain Keyes.
The captain has dropped out of contact, Cortana. His ship may be out of range or having equipment problems.
Keep trying. Let me know when you've re-established contact, and then tell him that the Master Chief and I have determined the location of the control center. We'll be heading there as soon as we're topside.
Affirmative. Phone hammer out.
Which you'll later find out during 343 Guilty Spark is most certainly the case. Making your way out of the facility, a huge group of Covenant attack while the more rock-orientated version of Halo's theme kicks in. I like to think that this next part of the mission serves a secondary purpose beyond simply quickening the pace as you make your way out of what is a somewhat uninspiring environment. Having nearly fought your way out of the building, you may once again be feeling pretty badass and will have most likely forgotten about the sword-wielding elite, who at this point hasn't been seen in quite some time, which makes his positioning round a corner where you won't notice him until the last minute such a great idea. I don't know about the rest of you, but I was scared half to death when I saw him for the first time, which is no doubt exactly what he was designed to do. And after one final face-off with a group of Covenant, including more invisible elites, the Silent Cartographer draws to a close. Except, there are two more changes to this level yet to find. I've already highlighted the Banshee and the Crashed Pelican as being two examples of how Bungie makes it feel like events are happening in the background, but it doesn't end there. If you head back to the beach from the start of the mission and check the area where Foehammer dropped off a Warthog, you'll find that all the Marines you left there are now dead. What exactly happened to them after you left to explore the rest of the island is never revealed, but it makes for a very grim discovery nonetheless. There's also a group of jackals in the circular area where you fought two hunters, along with a dropship waiting nearby. Whether the two are related in some way, I'm not sure, but I'd definitely love to know the reason behind their inclusions. I also can't end this mission without quickly talking about the Anniversary Edition's graphics, and I actually do have something semi-positive to say about them this time. While the indoor areas are like the rest of the indoor areas in the game in that they are an absolute shambles which have been so over-designed they almost hurt to look at, the outdoor areas in the Anniversary Edition of the Silent Cartographer I don't mind so much. I'd still never normally use them myself regardless, and there still remains a massive issue with the colour palette being much too warm compared to the original, but around the outskirts of the island especially, the added detail I actually don't mind too much at all. What you ultimately get with the Silent Cartographer is a level which is really well thought out and an absolute joy to play. It's a mission which takes everything that's great about Halo and packs it into a space big enough that events feel expansive, but not so big that pacing suffers as a result. Combine that with the sheer number of brilliant design choices throughout, and what you get is a level that isn't just brilliant for its time, but to this day remains one of Halo's greatest moments. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video, boys, girls and Spartans. If you enjoyed it, do consider liking, subscribing and all that other good stuff, and hopefully I'll catch you all again soon.